Anger is all around us. Outbursts up and down the country eat away at our quality of life. Rage has become a social addiction. It's a habit that affects us all.
Even as recently as 20 years ago, very few people would lose their rag in public. And the sort of person who would lose their rag in public would have to have something quite badly wrong with them. The sort of person who loses their rag today could be almost anybody.
Tonight we're going to look at what can be done about rage. What, if anything, we can do to give up our addiction to anger as the instinctive response to everything and everyone we're confronted by. It's an anger we see every day of the week.
My mum brought me up with manners, right? My mum taught me to respect my elders and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, I am my own person, yeah?
Kilroy has been bringing angry people to our screens for 15 years now, and it's never been easier to find guests who come on and let rip, whatever the subject.
I would be out there fighting.
Oh, brilliant, I'm being abused, yeah, brilliant.
Hang on, my friend. Hang on, my friend.
To be in a costume on her own. She wants to be with a whole group of school children.
My child has.
Kim, hold on.
I don't like my child.
Debbie, let him on.
Well, that's sorry.
Part of the therapy here is actually getting it off your chest. That you'll feel really good when you walk out of the studio if you've said what you came along to say and you've put your 2 pence worth in and you have got it off your chest. And people stand up from these seats here and they'll walk up to me and they'll actually go, I feel better for that.
Perhaps they will during Kilroy, but outside the theatre of the television studio, letting our anger out is a dangerous business. Feet.
All smashed.
Fortunately, the staff managed to restrain him before he could endanger the lives of everyone on the plane.
Fly with me, let's fly away.
Unfortunately, air rage like this is no longer that uncommon.
I mean, instances have gone up by over 400% over the last 4 years. There's quite a lot of footage nowadays of some really nasty incidents, and there have been some fatal incidents in some cases. So what we're trying to do is deal with something that's very much on people's minds.
Step forward, attach. Go!
Most airlines now have to employ people like Joe Brain to teach their staff how to deal with angry passengers. Joe and his team use role play based on real cases of recent air rage.
I don't!
Okay, if there's anything that we can help...
Try and talk to her, it's bloody stupid.
Okay, I understand, we're on a...
It's not all the bloody time.
It is all the time.
It's not, just keep out of it.
You're the one making a show.
I'm not bloody showing.
Making a show. Calm down, don't get so angry.
These techniques for dealing with anger and rage are now in great demand all over Britain.
We're dealing with retail, the major people like Marks and Spencer's and Selfridges, but we're also dealing with hospitals and the NHS trusts who have a massive problem with people coming in their environment. But it can go from the areas you wouldn't even think, like Centre Parks, which is obviously a leisure park, and Legoland, which is a children's park. So it's across the board.
At the heart of this anger, of all the rise in anger since 1950, is the feeling of legitimation, a feeling that it is legitimate for me to get this feeling that I have over to you, because, you know, and that can be moralistic. It can be saying, you know, because you deserve, you must know, nothing's going to improve until you understand. You know, there could be that sort of moralistic tone, an authoritarian tone. But it can also just be because you're the enemy.
In this climate, it's going to be tough to change people's attitudes, and even tougher to change their behaviour. But in tonight's programme, we're going to look at how we at least might make a start. To help us, we've enlisted 2 typically angry people. Meet Graham Cox, a charity worker from Wallingford, and Polly Lavender, a chef from Tolworth in Surrey. Both say they're open to change, but they've both been angry for a long time.
I've smashed a telephone up in a previous house that we lived in. I punched my fist through the wall. You know, made it, probably after having a couple of drinks as well, it's probably made it a bit worse.
I just say things really for the sake of saying things, because I want probably to make a point. I keep going, and it's almost like an adrenaline rush.
When I get angry and I start really shouting, I go really, really red, and there's a vein that comes down the side of my face here, and it looks like it's someone's biroed on my face. My friends come up to me often like that. You got some biro on your face, but it's actually a vein where it's come up. I'm like, I had boiling point.
Here's a man who might be able to help. Consultant psychiatrist Raj Persaud.
A lot of people who get addicted to anger, we call them rajaholics. What they don't realise is in the long term, the consequences in terms of damaged relationships and damage to their bodies don't make anger something that works.
Hi.
Hi, Polly.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. You're looking very relaxed and calm. Could you possibly be getting so angry about?
Work. Yeah, because that's it, you see, I let it go for so long,
Yeah.
so they get the knack of just relaxing with it, and then they end up taking liberty so much.
Yeah.
They will actually try and knock them back into gear. I can get very hit up really easily and stressed out over things, and it reduces me to tears. And I think, you know, you're 30 years old, Paul, these things shouldn't bother you like they are bothering you now.
And to try and help Graham, Ros Taylor, a psychologist who specialises in anger management.
Tell me all about your anger.
I don't know what happened. I can remember this.
Anger is so destructive at home and at work. And although it might give people this release, the destruction it causes is just simply not worth it. Anger should be kept for very life-threatening situations, and certainly not for every day.
I want to stop the anger. It's something that I don't like about myself. It's a hard thing to try and lose.
And one of the hardest things to lose is the way we invariably look at the world these days. Take road rage. It's quite clear that people see everything and everyone around them as an obstacle, a threat, even an enemy to be overcome.
And he was screaming at me, "Who's the wanker now?"
I was trying to drag him back out the broken window, trying to drag him, you know, by his hair, anything I could get hold of.
If the world today is a hostile place, anger is an inevitable response. And confronted, as she sees it, by strangers.
So when you're outside of the kitchen, do you get very angry then? I'm just wondering about in a crowded street.
Like that? That would make me very angry, what he done. He deliberately walked into me.
Right.
That's a typical situation that would give you the You could see he was there.
Did you want to say anything to him?
What's exactly? You walked straight into me. Well, it's not, is it? You could see I was there. You could see we was filming. You could at least step to the right.
I didn't even notice you were there. What are you on about?
Well, you must have been blind, mate. Well, that's a typical. And he says we're in Kingston. There's thousands of people live in Kingston. If you all walk around like that, you're all going to end up in a punch-up. You can't walk around like that. You saw what he done. We're here, quite as plain as daylight, that what we're doing, and he's just blatantly walked into me.
And you had a few words with him, didn't you?
Well, yeah, you're not going to, you know, that's just rude. People are just rude. He didn't even say sorry, did he? He just carried on walking.
You're still quite agitated about it, aren't
Well,
you?
yeah, because he just blatantly thinks that he hasn't done anything wrong. In the past, has he? I've never had a fight in the past.
Polly's anger was automatic, but Raj now has a surprise.
Because I've got to tell you now, this was a bit of a setup.
Are you kidding?
This was a bit of a setup. These two people are on the team.
I would have tried a little bit harder if you wouldn't have snapped so much, you know.
We did that on purpose.
He's blatantly done that to me. How could he say that? You kid.
That's what surprised me.
We did that just to see how you would react.
Well, there you go. I've done what you wanted me to do.
Exactly. Very predictably, you lost your temper. But how do you feel about that now?
It's quite amusing what you've done to me. I think that's really funny.
But Graham's not seeing the funny side of things out driving with Ros.
What I was doing, I was going to cut him up and just box him in there. And I thought, no, silly bastard.
And there are a lot of silly bastards around. Lorry drivers, taxis, pedestrians.
I just feel they're generally thick. They don't look at what's going on with the traffic flow.
Roz is trying to persuade Graham that he doesn't have to see other road users as the enemy. His anger isn't inevitable.
So people are thick all the time these days.
He's thick. Seems to be some kind of trigger for you, some kind of hot button. Mistake, he's thick, and you become angry. So how can we change that?
I suppose I could say, you know, he's made a mistake. He's just done something without thinking. Doesn't happen all the time. The next babe when he walks off, he'll probably look both ways. It was just a momentary thing.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And that is probably nearer the truth, really, than that the entire population of Britain crossing roads are thick.
Yeah, but why do I collide most of them?
They see you coming.
This happened the second time round.
Raj too has made Polly laugh. A good sign. But can he now persuade her she doesn't have to get angry when provoked? He's going to put her through exactly the same annoyance again. But this time she knows it's coming. Will this make any difference?
And we were having a very pleasant time. Chatting away quite casually. And then...
Excuse me? That really hurt.
Well, you say sorry then, and then maybe we can
Well, I
sort it
think
out.
you should say sorry to me first. You bumped into me.
No, you went into me.
Well, whatever, mate. Okay,
Fair
apologise.
enough, you're talking and that, and we're shopping, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, all right,
Fair
sorry.
as,
All
sweet
right.
as.
How do you feel? How do you feel second time round?
Feel like an idiot then.
But you seem to feel able to let go slightly easier.
Yeah, I know,
first time
but
round.
I knew, yeah.
But you see, you could let go.
Yeah.
You can learn to let go.
Yeah, I see
I
where you're
think.
coming from. Definitely.
Yeah,
Should we just pull over here and have a chat?
Graham too is convinced other drivers do him wrong. If Ross can change that attitude, then his anger will stop being an inevitable response.
When you drive, I just want you to change your thinking when you see somebody. Just every time you see somebody make a mistake, don't use the word thick, but just say, hey, it's a mistake.
Call everyone a little old lady.
Whatever you want to do that you find positive, you go for it. But you just change that thinking every day for 3 weeks, and then another 9 turns it into a habit, so that you're just so equable when you're out of the car. Everything is just so laid back and easy. You see lots of mistakes, but hey, that's life. Okay.
But will Roz's pep talk make any difference when someone cuts Graham up?
What was your first knee-jerk response to him? What went through your mind?
An honest one? Bloody nuisance.
Bloody nuisance, okay. What now would you say?
Sorry.
No, what now would you say in your alternative thoughts?
An alternative?
Yes.
Well, I just accept the fact that he's, maybe he's got to get somewhere fairly quickly and ignore what he did and let him get on with it. And just let him go.
There you go.
To a certain degree, we have a degree of freedom in choosing our reaction patterns. And we can either choose to identify with the patterns that we encountered in our own home life, or we can say, well, that's not going to work for me. I want a different pattern. And some people...
Graham's reaction comes as no surprise to psychologist Joe Griffin, one of the country's top experts on anger. In his lectures across the country over the last decade, he's witnessed how quickly people can change their anger habits when taught to see the world as a less hostile place.
What we need to do is to help somebody who has a characteristic pattern, say, of getting angry in a certain context, such as, say, in road rage, a person who frequently gets angry in that context. We can help them by helping them to develop new viewpoints in such a situation. And that is the single most powerful, rapid way of dissolving anger. When we can have a different understanding of the situation, the anger can dissolve almost instantly. So that is the key thing.
Another key thing is challenging the view, extremely common these days, that in many situations it's good to be angry. It's necessary. It's justified.
You just have to tell them. And if it means you have to be nasty, you have to be nasty.
So in the world today, anger seems to work. Certainly this is how Polly and Graham see it. Raj and Roz's second main task is to try and persuade them that getting angry doesn't in fact work, that they need to take a different tack to get what they want.
Basically, they've totally let you down. They've waited people.
Polly sees anger as a weapon in her kitchen armoury, especially when someone mucks up her cooking.
Just imagine that he was here. What would you be saying to him? What sort of things? As you got a bit wound up about
I'd probably throw it on the floor, to be honest with you.
You'd throw it on the floor?
I probably would.
Yeah, right.
I'll probably get to that stage. I've told you 1,000 times, you know, I can't go through it again.
Yes.
You're now starting to wind me up, and I'd just probably get it and throw it on the floor and say, you're not worth it, I'll do it myself.
Right.
It'd be end of, because it just, you know, if you can repetitively keep telling somebody and they're not doing it, it's you know, you're not getting through. There's no point in them even being there, because obviously they don't want to learn.
Talk about an alternative way of dealing with it.
Well, I don't know an alternative way. And what
Exactly.
do you do?
Girl,
You just tell them to leave the kitchen. Can you just leave the kitchen, please? Calmly and whatever.
Right.
You know,
So
what
every
else can
time
you do?
in your future as a chef that someone has not piled the spinach properly over the salmon, you're going to deal with it by asking them to leave the kitchen.
Well,
I'm asking, is it not going to happen in the future?
of course it's going to happen. There's going to be time and time again that you try.
Exactly. So let's think about another way of dealing with it.
Meanwhile, Graham has been telling Roz about a typical situation where he felt losing his temper really did work. He was managing a club at the time, and he got very angry when an assistant refused to work an extra shift.
Can we try it? I mean, if it doesn't work,
He was quite happy to show Roz how he'd reacted then. All she had to do was ad-lib the role of his assistant.
You serve behind a bar, you don't even do any sweeping up or tidying up or anything. I'm in every morning, I'm in here at 9 o'clock. Last weekend I worked through from 9 in the morning through till 2 o'clock the next morning.
I work hard as well, and I'm working very long hours, and I get very, very tired.
You're far happier just watching people doing the work. Do a little bit here, a little bit there.
I've been
and all I'm
lifting
asking you
and
to do
laying
is
and
for
doing all
one
sorts of
night.
things.
Not at
no,
all.
that is very unfair of you.
It's
I
not
work
unfair.
very hard
Absolutely
for you.
not unfair
I
at
have
all.
done everything you want me to do.
And you're just a lazy cow half the time.
Lazy cow?
Yes, a lazy cow.
Graham's assistant did do the shift. A week later, she resigned. Polly hasn't caused anyone to resign, yet. She thinks it's natural to be angry in the kitchen, and she's got some famous support.
Look at all the top chefs. You know, all Gary Rhodes, and well, he's not one that shouts, but Marco Pierre White, he's one for shouting. You know, he's going to get the You see him
But
getting
there's a difference between shouting and you're in control when you're shouting, and shouting and being out of
because
control.
they listen to him. You say they don't listen to me. He's getting somewhere. I'm not getting anywhere.
Right.
And neither is the anger management. Raj takes a different tack. He tries to get Polly to consider what her anger at work means for the rest of her life.
Being angry in the kitchen, or losing your temper, or being out of control, in a situation where you feel totally justified, overspills into the rest of your life. Because the more you're angry in one situation, you tend to be angry in other situations, like personal relationships. You get yourself upset, and that leads to difficulty forming other relationships outside the kitchen. And so one of the consequences of not being in control in the kitchen and not learning not to get so upset is that your own personal life is being affected. And so the spinach and the salmon, again, one of the images I want you to think about when you see the spinach not being right and the salmon, is the impact on your personal life. That the people who are close to you are actually being hurt and affected by your loss of control. Could you give those things some thought?
Polly isn't convinced. Neither entirely is Graham. They reckon their anger at work is successful, and if there is the occasional casualty, well, that's life.
You feel it's an unfair situation.
But Roz has at least persuaded Graham to try out a different non-confrontational script, if he can remember his lines.
Okay, do you want to sit down and talk about it? Or not?
Yeah, sure.
If you want to, I don't mind.
Okay.
Okay. So why aren't you prepared to do it?
I just
You
feel
know
like...
you do it on a regular basis.
Okay.
Every Friday.
Could we
yeah.
just use the script? You're quite aggressive with me at the moment. Are you aware of that? You're quite aggressive.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. So we're trying to change this. No, it's good because it means that I could shape you and change it a little.
Look, Roz, I've worked for 3 weeks now without a break at all, and all I'm asking is for one night just to have a complete and utter break. I've got a heavy weekend coming up. I'm just going to appeal to you, to your better senses to help me out.
Are you aware of how wildly different you are that second time than you were the first time? Because you were very, even at the beginning of the second time, you were very much telling me what was wrong with me and what was wrong with the situation, whereas just describing how you feel was so compelling for me. Because underneath all of this, I'm a nice person, and I hadn't realised how you felt, because you hadn't told me. You hadn't communicated that, you just got angry. And when people get angry, you just get defensive and you get angry back. You fight fire with fire. You just metamorphosed into a completely different human being there, and a powerful human being that communicated how you felt.
It's hard though.
Did it feel hard?
It feels very, very hard to do it, yeah. It didn't feel natural.
Who let the dogs out?
The problem is that being natural today too often means giving vent to our most primitive animal instincts. And the tendency to lash out at the least provocation is not only dangerous in the extreme, it actually doesn't work anyway. Anger very rarely gets you what you want.
Generally, when we get aggressive, people do not lie down and roll over. How often has it actually happened in your life when you've been intensely angry with a colleague or a partner that they've suddenly stopped you mid-flow and said, "My God, I see the light. You're absolutely right. How could I have been so stupid? 1,000 apologies." It doesn't actually happen. What happens when we get angry is the other person gets defensive, they start to attack back, and we both become more and more stupid. And we say things we don't mean, and the situation doesn't get resolved.
And there's something else that needs resolving as well. By far the biggest challenge facing angry Britain is the almost universal, yet mistaken belief that when you do get angry, the best thing is to get it off your chest. After frustration on the roads and resentment at work, it's not surprising many of us feel this way.
It's my release. It's a way of calming down.
Both Graham and Polly are dedicated to letting it out. And changing that view will be Roz and Raj's final and most difficult task. Like many people, Graham thinks one of the best ways to let that anger out is by physical exercise. Hit those weights, punch that bag. Roz is going to convince him that this is all wrong. Recent research shows that far from getting rid of anger, all exercises like hitting punch bags do is make you even angrier.
A couple of reasons for that. It keeps physiological arousal high, so therefore you can trigger off into anger quite easily. But at the same time, it keeps the habit going. And what we've been talking about is actually changing that habit, breaking the habit, and replacing it with something else.
And here's the something else. Not the swim, but proper relaxation.
Teach you a very quick relaxation exercise.
Roz is showing Graham that he feels much less angry if he simply allows his body to quieten down. And it seems to be having a pretty good effect. It's impossible to be angry if you're horizontal. But swimming or gentle walking works as well. What doesn't work are stimulating activities like shopping or going over things endlessly with friends. Which is exactly what Polly does. She's convinced that talking about what's made her angry is the best way of dealing with it, especially her anger towards men.
Once you start letting them know that your feelings are sort of seeping in, that's when they know that
they start taking
liberties.
liberties, they really do. It's gift too much, no? You love someone so quick. Yeah. And they just do the best.
Yeah, but they should be grown men, they should be adults, and they should be able to deal with it.
And the lies that they come out with, the lies that those guys have told me, I'll tell you what, I don't think I'm never going to be able to trust another man again.
Yeah,
they are good liars, aren't they, some of them? Really good liars. Really good liars. I mean, I think they go to school in it, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. They must get together and
like... kind of things and look at you. It's not even so often do that, and
how can they do that?
It makes you laugh because they've already got you to bed, so they don't have to lie to you anymore. They can just carry on. They've got you where they wanted to get you, but they still carry on, don't they? Yes. Carry on and on. Oh, it's mad.
Speaking of carrying on and on, this kind of conversation where you carry on complaining about men, how awful men are. Can you talk about this for quite a long time when we get together? Hours?
All night.
Yeah, definitely.
But there is a lot of evidence that just ruminating and obsessing for long periods of time, hours and hours, about things that have upset you, perhaps particularly men that have got you angry, actually in the long run gets you just angrier and angrier.
Well, it's hard to forget about it because you've been hurt so many times, you just can't forget about it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, definitely.
I want you to consider doing something very different. Instead of just ruminating about the thing and obsessing about the thing that makes you angry, I want you to consider doing something distracting, something pleasurable, something that will actually take your mind off the thing that's making you angry, even for a very short while, because you'll find yourself refreshed, more creative, and the problem will actually seem less big if you've stopped dwelling on it for a while. Then you have to learn.
Polly promises to think about it, but it's a view that she, like many people, hold dear. It's good to express your feelings of anger. Better to let it out than keep it in.
If we were to look at another area of life where we can see the same pattern, you'll see what's wrong with it. Take a World Boxing Championship. You get two boxers training for the World Boxing Championship. They're in their rings, they have a punch bag shaped rather like a human head, and they visualise that as their opponent. And they punch the living daylights out of it. Now, if this theory about getting the anger out were right, on the day of a World Boxing Champion, these two big muscle-bound men, as they approach each other in the ring, they would be overwhelmed by an affectionate desire and start to embrace right there and then in the centre of the ring. But how often do you actually see that happen? It doesn't happen. How the brain actually functions is this, is what you rehearse is what you get. Whatever patterns you rehearse in your imaginative mind, those patterns come more easily to the brain. So the more you rehearse anger, the more likely you are to become angry.
Graham and Polly are at least half convinced. They've taken many of Raj and Roz's points to heart and are learning to relax. But can they really give up their anger habit?
So difficult when you're in that situation to keep the level of your anger down rather than let it boil in. It's so difficult. But yeah, I will try. And obviously the advice he has given me is very good. But whether it's going to work or not in the future, I have no idea. I'm afraid.
I learned a lot from that time I spent with Roz. I remember actually going on to Paddington Station after talking to her in London, and someone walked straight into me in a probably situation before that I'd maybe been a little bit cross up, but I just carried on my own way without saying anything or making any remarks or whatever. So it was almost an instantaneous success.
And that's encouraging. Graham and Polly's experience with anger management shows that it is possible to change. And changing individuals will make at least some difference to Britain remaining a country full of rage. But in the long term, these individual changes are only going to be really effective if there are social and cultural shifts as well, away from anger being fashionable to anger being regrettable and uncool.
A lot of people are feeling very angry and very unhappy, and there's a huge amount that actually could be done. We could be, instead of being encouraged to be, in a winner-loser, dog-eat-dog kind of at each other's throats sort of society. It's not just wild, pathetic, optimism to say that we have instincts to cooperate. We have an instinct to be altruistic. We do have instincts that are very much played down by the society we're in.